What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a competitive tier list for the September 2019 format. This is a guide to help you if you're planning on going to any major tournament, whether you're going to a regional, try to get your invite for nationals in 2020, or maybe you're going to YCS like YCS Niagara, or YCS Ghent, or maybe a PPT like Pro Play Tour Columbus, which is going to take place October 12th and 13th. $2,000 prize pool up for grabs. If you get your invite, you're invited to the $10,000 prize pool invitational in January, and I'll be there, of course, doing live commentary for the event as well. So links in the description if you want to pre-register, and I hope to see you guys there. But I wanted to make this video just to serve as a guide so you know that what decks are going to be seen in more popularity versus less. But there are a lot of decks that are seeing play because we are in a very diverse format, and so I want to give you guys a quick guide and rundown so you guys should know what to expect. If you want to see me talk about some of these decks in more detail, I have several videos talking about the top 5 meta decks and the top 5 rogue decks, so you can check those out on the channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So here is the tier maker list, and we're just going to go one by one over the decks. I'm going to quickly touch on them, talk about them a little bit, just so we can comprise the list so you guys know what to expect. So first off, Mech Knight Invoked. This is a deck that a lot of people, you know, it's a deck that I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was a deck that, you know, it's always been in like that roguish slot, and I think that's kind of where it's going to stay for a while. I think it actually just took first place at a regional, if my memory serves me correctly. So it's like, again, it's like hovering, but there's not really too much there to talk about. It is a going second deck, but it's actually like fairly decent. It's okay, but I wouldn't expect to see too much of it. Just know that there are a couple of people experimenting with it. Altergeist. Altergeist is a deck that definitely goes in the tier 2 slot over the rogue slot, even though it's a deck that you shouldn't go into a tournament expecting to see, versus like something, let's say Mech Knight Invoked. Altergeist has actually been winning regionals, and if you haven't been paying attention, that is very significant, and also has topped YCS Portland and the UDS Invitational. So this deck is definitely on the map, and you're going to be more likely seeing a deck like this than say anything in the rogue category. That's kind of what you want to look at when you're looking at this tier list. Tier 1 are the decks you're going to be seeing the most because they are the most powerful and represented. Tier 2 are the decks that they're competitive and they can win, but you shouldn't expect to see them as often. And the rogue decks are still viable, but they're more like sleeper picks, so you shouldn't really expect to see them at all, but they may pop up, and they have been doing something and have actually had multiple appearances at higher tiers of competitive play. So that's how you should read this tier list, just so you guys have that information. Next up is ABC. This is in the rogue category. ABC had like a weekend where for some reason like 2 or 3 of them managed to like top regionals, which is really odd. You know, it's ABC. There's not really much to say about it. I don't really think it's anything you should worry about too much, but then again, if it was able to top a couple regionals, I mean, obviously some people are experimenting with it, so just be mindful that there are a couple of people out there. Cyber Dragon. Okay, so this is also going to be going into the tier 2 slot. This is more focused on the Cyber Dragon Orcas variant, and honestly, if there was a tier 1.5 on this list, I honestly might put that Cyber Dragon Orcas deck there, because I think this deck is highly underrated at the moment. I think this deck has incredible matchups going first or second against all the tier 1 competitors, which you will see on this list very shortly, but do not underestimate this deck. I think this deck is going to be on the rise and may potentially be a, you know, maybe a tier 1 contender after a month or so. Do not underestimate this very powerful deck. Burning Abyss, going to be in the rogue slot. We had one, I believe, top YCS Portland. I think I have that deck profile on my channel. And we've seen a couple of other builds that have been topping regionals here and there, but nothing too crazy. I mean, it's Burning Abyss. It's been a deck that's like withstood the test of time. Dante will never die. And honestly, I think a lot of us are okay with that, but for the most part, shouldn't expect to see it too much. Necrons I'm going to have in the rogue tier as well. I want to put Necrons at tier 2 so bad. I mean, it got a top cut slot at YCS Portland, which is actually pretty significant considering the fact that it's a very solid deck. I think the problem is it's like missing like one thing, or maybe people just aren't feeling it. It just has the tools. I just feel like maybe it needs the correct pilot, or maybe in a similar vein to like Cyber Orcas, that people need to just experiment with the deck more to see how they can make it function. Unicorn is insane. Trishul is insane. Valk, like the deck is just insane, but I wouldn't expect to see it at this tier 2 level, so that's why I'm going to put it at rogue. Madolche. Madolche is also a a rogue competitor. There's a going second Madolche build that pretty much focuses on just OTKing you flat out, kind of like how like old school Crusadia did, and it's pretty neat. Again, I wouldn't expect to see it too much, but it's gotten a top or 2 at regionals, so that's pretty noteworthy, and so I figured I would go ahead and mention that. Heroes. Now, Heroes is another rogue contender that I actually heavily underestimated. Again, I'm not expecting to see Heroes everywhere, but seeing this deck be played at higher tiers of competitive play, this deck can actually do some pretty neat things. I mean, its end boards are actually rather formidable. I feel like it runs out of gas too quickly, and that's the biggest problem, but Vision Hero Vion pretty much just enables the entire deck to go off, and if you're not cognizant that this deck is in the format, it could completely catch you off guard, so just bear that in mind. Subterra Guru, or aka Guru Control, gonna be in the tier 2 slot. Guru Control, it's been able to top multiple YCSs. It's topped, let's see, the PPTs. It's been winning. It's actually been winning and topping regionals left and right. I definitely think this is a solid tier 2 contender. Remember, these tier 2 decks are the decks you're going to see more often compared to like these rogue picks, but Subterra is right up there with like Altergeist and Cyber Dragon Orcas at this point. It's another control style deck, a lot of really good tools at its disposal. It has the potential to play with the tier 1 contenders, and I think that really does count. True Draco, you know what? We got to give Draco into the tier 2 slot as well, because Draco has just always been able to get top cut slots no matter what event it's in, whether it's a regional, a pro play tour, a YCS. It just has so much ability to top, and it really doesn't do anything different. It's just kind of like this, you know, tried and true deck that has been able to compete month after month after month, regardless of what the ban list brings, and I think that definitely makes it worthy of tier 2. A lot of people do love Draco too, just because it is really cheap. I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons why people like playing it, but for a linear deck, it's got a lot of power behind it, and you really can't underestimate that, so definitely worthy of tier 2. Dragon Link. So Dragon Link I'm actually going to put in the rogue tier, because while Dragon Link had a lot of hype behind it going into the release of the Rocket Structure deck, not really doing a whole lot. Like, people have been trying to make this deck work, but especially now with the Megaton promos being released, I think it's kind of in this slot where it's really just not doing as much as people wanted. There's just better combo decks to play that are more resilient to a lot of the different decks that are in the format. We don't have any of the cards that the OCG has, at least as of yet. We will be getting Striker Dragon and stuff in Chaos Impact, but I think for the time being, any sort of Dragon Link based deck or Rocket deck is going to have to be in the rogue category in my book. Remember, this is completely my opinion, yours may differ, but just from what I've been seeing from past results, I'm not really feeling it with Dragon Link. That doesn't mean people aren't going to try to play it, but I definitely don't think you should expect to see too many of them, and even if you do, it's another combo deck that just goes into Guard Dragon, so you pretty much know how to handle that anyway. Magical Musketeers, rogue, but there have been a lot of people playing this deck. We first saw this, I believe, at the PPT in Philadelphia, and ever since that got a top 8 finish, there have been several Magical Musketeer builds in other regionals that have been getting top cut slots, and that's pretty impressive. Now, there's been 2 different builds. There's like a going first build taking advantage of ties. This is what people know, but I like the going second build that we saw at the PPT in Philadelphia. I have that deck profile on my channel if you want to check that out too, but pretty neat deck. Again, I wouldn't expect to see it too much, but just be mindful. Maybe you want to look up the cards just so you know what they do. Maybe have some idea on how to play against this deck, but I wouldn't expect to see too much of it out there. Now we have Endymion. The first tier 1 slot has been filled, and this kind of overlaps with like Pendulum Magician and any Pendulum based deck really like Zephyra, but Endymion I feel like is definitely the way to go in this format. The reasoning is because you got stuff like Jackal King. Serving Endymion can search Jackal King, which gives you immunity from Nibiru, and then you can also play stuff. You can just play like one Zephyr and one Divine Strike to be able to stop stuff like There Can Be Only One. It's just the combo deck with the most resilience against these blowout cards, but also can just assemble these amazingly powerful boards. We've seen it top pretty much every event in the past, not even since the Megatons have been released, but even before that, making both top 8 and top 16 finishes at multiple events. Definitely worthy of tier 1, definitely a heavy contender in this September 2019 format. And right behind it, we're going to have Orcas as well. Orcas, I think, might have the highest representation out of every deck we're going to have in the tier 1 slot here. There's multiple different variants of Orcas. There's stuff like Pure Orcas, which is just playing stuff like Vishuda, different things like that. There's the going second Orcas build, which just aims to just like pretty much OTK with Borosword Dragon, but it's a really, really sick deck. You've got stuff like Cyber Orcas, which I kind of separated because the Cyber Dragons do play a very pivotal role in kind of identifying that deck in a different way, but I kind of put Lunalight Orcas here with the normal Orcas build because, yeah, while the Lunalights make the deck unique, I still feel like you're just kind of contributing to the Orcas combo itself, so you can kind of throw the Lunalight part in here as well. But any sort of Orcas build, I definitely think is tier 1, and you're going to expect to see a lot of Orcas moving forward, at least until we have our next ban list. Grand Maju to Iza, it is rogue, but this is actually a very terrifying rogue deck that I would not expect we would be seeing this much of. I mean, the fact that this deck not only took second place at YCS Portland, it's actually like topping other regionals as well. I think there's like 3 or 4 other lists that are either going first or going second variants playing Grand Maju to Iza, and that's crazy. Like, I never expected this deck to actually take off. I thought it was going to be a one-hit wonder, but this deck is actually very real. There's so many good tools, especially if you're going second, to break apart opposing boards, then just slap in with one Grand Maju. Definitely do not underestimate this deck. Don't expect to see it, but you might go up against one, and it could just be very brutal if you're not adequately prepared. Next up, we have Mystic Mine. Good old Jeff. We got this at top 16 from Pro Play Tour Orlando. You know what? I gotta give kudos to him. Like, I think it actually showed that Mystic Mine Burn can still compete, especially when people have no idea that this deck could still be played in the form that it is, and it's a deck that it can just completely blindside you if you're not prepared. So make sure you've got your tools to deal with your Mystic Mine strategies. Again, I wouldn't expect to see it a lot. You're gonna see Mystic Mine more so being used in stuff like Sky Striker, maybe in stuff like this going second Orcas list, or maybe some people might side deck it just to stop these other combo decks, but just be mindful that Mystic Mine is still in the format, and maybe you might see a Mystic Mine Burn player at a competitive event. Next we have Salomon Grid, going to be in the tier 1 slot. Salomon Grid has still been able to take up massive amounts of representation in the top cuts of numerous tournaments, and it's very powerful, it's very consistent. Again, it doesn't do anything ridiculous, but I feel like it's backed by its consistency. It just does what it's supposed to do every single round, and over the course of a long tournament, that's what you want out of a deck, and so that's why I have to put it in the tier 1 slot. Really not much else to say. Same thing goes for Sky Striker. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Sky Striker right at the front of the tier 1 list, because realistically, Sky Striker, in my opinion, is the best deck of the format. It continues to win event after event after event, especially at higher tiers of competitive play. I definitely think Sky Striker is the deck to beat, with maybe like Orcas in second just because of its representation, and then you've got the other tier 1 decks in here. But if you're going to any major event, prepare for Sky Striker and Orcas the most, because those are the decks you're going to be seeing the most because they've been seeing the most success. Next up, we've got Spiral. This is going to be in Rogue, but I thought I'd mention Spiral because there's actually a few Spiral builds that have been topping regionals. It's kind of neat. I mean, Spiral is still able to compete. It's a nice going first or going second deck. It's always been a nice combo deck. Hell, you can even do Orcas combos with it. Who knew, right? So I definitely think Spiral was worth mentioning. Thunder Dragon. So we're going to go ahead and put Thunder Dragon in here. This is more of the pure Thunder Dragon list, so just keep that in mind. Pure Thunder Dragon at tier 1. That's going to wrap up our tier 1 lineup, I believe. But Thunder Dragon, it's just very solid. The fact that you've still got Colossus being able to lock out your opponent from searching, Titan is just an absolute monster. It's been garnering lots of top cut representation. There's just a lot of really good strengths to Thunder Dragon, so those are the top 5 decks you definitely have to look out for. Like I said, I've already done a video on those if you want to see some more in-depth discussion. Paleozoic, again, going to be in the rogue slot. Nothing much to say. I mean, it's been hanging around, getting a top or two, but something to just be mindful of. Crusadia Thunder Dragon is something I definitely want to talk about, and the reason for that is because Crusadia Thunder Dragon has definitely fallen off the radar just because of the impact of Nibiru and Dark Ruler No More, because that deck loses to those cards very hard. It doesn't have a way to put up a negate to stop Nibiru, and it doesn't have any way to negate Dark Ruler No More because the deck plays like 37 monsters. So, as a result of that, this deck has fallen out of favor a lot. Now, there are still people playing the deck, however, just be mindful that it's not going to be nearly as impactful as stuff like Pure Thunder, Salomon Grid, different things like that. There are much stronger combo decks that are going to be around, like Endymion as well. So, Crusadia Thunder Dragon, some people are still messing with it, but I think with the new Megaton promos, it's definitely fallen out of favor. And last but not least, True King Dinosaur. True King Dinosaur, I mean, it's been actually getting some tops, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I think there's, it's just like VFD Turbo, and then you've got Ultimate Conductor Tyrant just to OTK your opponent so easily. I mean, it's got so many cool things going for it, but I don't really think it has like the consistency to be able to go anywhere above the rogue category, but I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. So guys, that's gonna go ahead and do it for my competitive tier list for September 2019. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Remember, I've got a lot more in-depth discussion videos on a lot of these decks as well as deck profiles, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.